So how did Chinese characters go from this to this? Ever wonder how we ended up with Chinese characters looking the way they do? Where did they come from? Well, we're about to give you the whole story here on Learn Chinese Now. So our story starts in the faraway mists of ancient history. Around 5,000 years ago, there was a mythical ruler called the Yellow Emperor, who was famous for inventing the Chinese calendar, wooden carts, and a ton of other stuff. One day, he had a bunch of livestock that needed to be counted. So he tapped one of his top advisors, a man named Chengjie, a guy who just happened to have 4 eyes. At the time, people just counted stuff by tying knots into various shapes to represent numbers, and Chengjie quickly realized that wasn't going to cut it. So one day, he was walking and thinking to himself when a giant phoenix flew overhead and dropped something in front of him. He took a look and saw that it was a footprint indented on a chunk of earth. But he couldn't recognize what the footprint belonged to. So he brought it to a hunter, who told him that it was a pixiu, which is a winged lion with a dragon head. Then a light came on for Chengjie. The footprint was a representation of the pixiu. It was a character for the animal. So he would make representations of all things, and that would be writing. So Chengjie observed and thought and drew, and finally, he showed his writing system to the world. Legend has it that the day Chengjie revealed his writing system, ghosts wailed in terror and the skies rained millet. So that's the legend. But when did Chinese writing first appear physically? So the first time we see a real Chinese writing system is on oracle bones, or jiaguwen, which date from 1250 BC to 1050 BC. So what the heck are oracle bones? Well, in those days, people would take a bone, like a cow shoulder or a turtle belly, then they would carve a question on it. A lot of questions were actually pretty basic, like, am I going to have a good day? Or, should I take my cows to the market today? Then they would heat the bone until it cracked. The cracks were supposed to be a sign from the gods. So a soothsayer would tell you what the cracks told you about your fortune. So it was kind of like going to get your horoscope read. At that time, a lot of Chinese characters looked basically like pictures. If you look at the character for fish or mountain, they're basically pictures of these objects. But the characters on the oracle bones had proper grammar. So they were a legit writing system. So eventually, oracle bone script morphed into bronze script, or jinwen, which dates from around 1000 BC. And it's exactly what it sounds like. Chinese characters on bronze objects, mainly bells and cauldrons. If you look at the difference between the word dirt in oracle bone script versus bronze script, it is that the characters start to get simplified and use more straight lines instead of the curves you would use in drawing. If you look at the modern form of dirt, you kind of get the idea. After bronze script comes seal script, or 篆书, which dates from around 700 BC. It derived from bronze script, where it began to diverge into 2 variations, large seal script and small seal script. But the small seal script is much more important because it became the official script of the Qin dynasty, which was the first dynasty to really try and standardize a bunch of stuff like currency, measurements, and writing. With seal script, it's rounded, and it starts going more towards abstractions instead of pictures. We can see this with a character for horse, Ma. The seal script has a kind of cartoonish look, but is much more abstract and closer to the modern character than the bronze one. Due to its decorative nature, seal script is still used occasionally for calligraphy and seal chops. So soon, seal script became clerical script, or 隶书. Clerical script started around 300-400 BC, but is famous for being the official script of the Han Dynasty, which is one of the most powerful dynasties in all of China's history and comparable in size to the Roman Empire. The reason it was called clerical script is because it was being used for government documents. People were trying to make an efficient-to-write script, and they were also trying to make something that worked well with ink, which was the medium of choice at the time. Let's go back to the character for horse. As you can see, clerical script looks a lot different from seal script. The characters are much shorter and fatter. At that point, bamboo strips were the main way to write, and space on them was limited. Making wide horizontal strokes and limiting the vertical size made it easier to fit more characters on the strip. You can also see the little uplift on the bottom right. That's characteristic of brush strokes, something you couldn't do on bronze or silk or pottery before. Finally, you notice that the character is much less artistic and more efficient than before. Again, it's being used for government work and not decoration. Clerical script eventually died out in common use, but is still used in calligraphy today. Now, during the Han Dynasty, they tried to figure out a way to write even faster, and that's how we got running script, or 行书. Running script is also known as semi-cursive script. Now, what does that mean? So the idea was that they wanted to get the speed of writing cursive, but with some rules to make sure that everyone could read it. So in running script, you're allowed to connect your strokes as you write, which is different from regular script, but you can't make it too artistic. So let's go back to the character for horse. On the top right is clerical script. On the bottom left is running script. You can see that many of the brush strokes are consolidated into a single stroke, but you can still make out the outline of the character for horse. Now, the next two characters in the bottom row, which you basically can't make out without context, are cursive script, or 草书. Now, 草 means grass. So you might be thinking, why is it called grass script? Well, 草 also means draft or hurried, and that's what it means here. It's a quick shorthand script that only people who know calligraphy will understand. So, there are three types of cursive. First, 章草, or ancient cursive, and it's based off of cursive script. Then you've got modern cursive, or 金草, and that's based on standard script, which we'll get to. Finally, we've got crazy cursive, or 狂草. A lot of people used to use this writing style when they were drunk. Hence the name. Now, for the script to end all scripts, standard script, or 楷书, the official script of the Tang Dynasty, which was the greatest dynasty in all of China's history. This standard script is everywhere now. You see it on government buildings, on banks, pretty much everywhere in your daily life. So let's look back at the character for horse. It's square instead of elongated. If you look at the hook at the bottom, or the way that the dots are done at the bottom, you can see that there is a clearly defined way to draw them. Standard script is systematic, clean, and easy to line up. So after standard script was invented, that was it. No major script styles came after that. Unless you want to talk about simplified characters. The 19th century was a rough one for China. They fell way behind the West. England and other imperial powers kept beating up on them. That's why they called it the Century of Humiliation for China. So in the 20th century, some people blamed traditional Chinese culture for China's problems. They thought that the fact that so few Chinese people could read was because Chinese characters were too hard to learn. So then they tried simplifying the characters. But the thing is, studies have shown that you can learn to read even faster with traditional Chinese characters than with simplified ones. So the whole thing was kind of pointless, unless you want to write faster, which simplified characters help with. Okay, now, how exactly did they simplify Chinese characters? Did they just cut here and throw something out there? Well, there's a number of methods that they used. They would use the cursive form of a character, like they did with Chang. They would sometimes just take components out of a character, like they did with Chang. And sometimes there would be multiple characters that were homophones, like gan and gan. And they would just use a single simplified version to refer to both of them. Gan. They had a bunch of these methods, and that's how simplified characters came about. They also changed the direction you read in. So in traditional Chinese, you start from the top right-hand corner of a page, you go down a column, then you go to the top of the column to the left-hand side of the one you just read, and so on. But in China now, they read like we do in English, from left to right, top to bottom. Now, I've got a question for you. Are you feeling a little tired? Well, do I have a solution for you? Try Days Coffee, fermented with 50 enzyme complex, only 15% caffeine of a regular cup of coffee, low acidity and gut friendly, and it is made with premium grade coffee beans, freshly roasted in upstate New York. Rich aroma with notes of dark chocolate, butterscotch, brown sugar, and nuttiness. Check out the link in the description below and use our code to get 15% off your order. So that's our journey of Chinese characters, from legendary beginnings to regular script to simplified characters. Is there a particular script you'd like me to talk more about? Let me know in the comments below. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and until next time, 再见! If you enjoy the deeper meaning behind Chinese culture, folklore, legends, and strange true stories, then come explore more with me on Jared Tells Tales, where mystery, meaning, and the otherworldly still live on. Click the link to watch your first tale.